In this question, we are going to discuss about the interaction pairs that's related to Newton's third law, right? I'll give you a small tip before solving this, and then we will proceed to solving this question. Okay. Interaction pair is something that is equal and opposite in magnitude to a force that is acting on an object. Correct? Just a review, Newton's third law states that for every force or every action force that is acting on one object, there will be an equal in magnitude and opposite in direction force acting on it. Now, when they specifically ask you to find this interaction pair, now what are the specialities or the characteristics of the interaction pair? You should understand. There are few common properties or similarities and also differences, right? Similarity one is it will be the same, sorry about that, magnitude will be the same, it will have the same type of force, it will act in the same line of action, and also the time for which it is acting will be the same. Meaning, if the force A on B acts for 1 second, the force acting on B on A would also be the same. All right, so magnitude, and what do you mean? So the time is the same, line of action, meaning if the force is acting in this direction, the reaction force also will be in the same direction, right? So that's about the line of action. It will not be acting in any other line. And type, what do you mean by type of force? So this is the easiest hint I could give you to find the interaction pair. Type meaning if one force is a field force, the other one also will be a field force, or the description of one of the force will be the same for the other force as well. With this example, I will explain it to you, you will understand it better. So what are the similarities of the two interaction, the pair forces related to Newton's third law is, one is magnitude, the second is type of force, third is line of action, and the fourth is the time for which the two forces are acting on each other. Now the differences between the two forces would be it acts on two different objects. So the forces acting will be on two different objects and it will be in the opposite direction. All right, this is just the theory behind Newton's third law. So the third law pair, the forces will have these four characteristics to be common, and these two are different, right? Now let's look into this question and how to solve it. Now, here they ask you to identify each force acting on the ball and its interaction pair. So each force acting on the ball is something related to the free body diagram, correct? So what do you mean by free body diagram? You draw all the forces acting on an object at that particular instant. So if I take the ball as a point object, so what are the forces acting on it? All objects, immediately you will draw the force of gravity, Fg, and you have the contact forces acting in the opposite direction, right? So this will be the normal force or the contact force. Normal force is acting upwards and the force of gravity is acting downwards. Now, usually the common mistake is students assume that these two are interaction pair. But remember what I told you before. One hint or one tip for you is Newton's third law pair will not act on the same object. Now, these two forces are acting on the same object, so they cannot be interaction pair, correct? Keep that point in mind. These two forces are acting on the same object, so that cannot be interaction pair. Then what are the, coming to the second part of this. So first we have identified the forces acting on the object, right? And then we need to find the interaction pair. Since there are two forces here, each one will have an interaction pair because a force cannot exist on its own. Now, let's see the description of this force of gravity. How does or where does this come from? From which object is this force acting on? The force of gravity from the earth on the object. Correct? If you describe this, the force of gravity or gravitational force, but which object is acting or providing this force is the earth, right? Force of gravity by the earth on the object, which is the ball. So this description will be the same for any object. Now, what is the counter force, the interaction pair? What would you do? This is the hint I want to give you. Just swap the terms. Okay, the counter pair will be the same type of force. It will also be force of gravity, but by the ball on the earth. Just swap it. That will be the interaction pair for force of gravity. All right, I hope that's clear. I repeat, so there are two forces acting on this object at this particular instance. Now we are asked to find out the interaction pair for each of the force. One force, that is force of gravity, I have taken it, force of gravity by the earth on the ball is acting downwards. So a similar force will be acting in the opposite direction. That force also will be the same type, force of gravity by the ball on the earth. All right. So that's one pair of interaction we have found out. The second pair will be for the normal force. How would you describe the normal force? That's the force exerted by the hand on the ball. That's easy, right? Normal contact force. So the opposite will be the force of the ball acting on the hand. So you just have to swap the terms. So I'll show you the expected answer or the choices they might give you in the examination paper. The forces on the ball are downward force of gravity due to mass of earth and the upward force of the hand, right? These two are the forces we have identified here. Now the force due to gravity of the ball on earth and the force of ball on the hand are the other pair. So if you're reading this without understanding, you might get confused. It is just first step, identify the forces on one object. Second step, identify or swap the object's position in your description. You will get the interaction pair.